Hey, it's Kesha. Welcome and welcome back. So I just want to hop on and just talk to you about something real quick that has come up recently and just something I was thinking about. This time of year, today is January 4th. You hear a lot of talk about New Year, New You. It's the start of the new year. We got to start fresh. We're going to start these new projects. I hope by now you recognize that in the dead of winter, we are not forming new blossoms, right? This is, well, technically, it's the beginning of, January 1st and start of our Gregorian calendar. It's actually not the start of the new year. The newness, that new part of the new year is a spring activity. That is, that's what March is. But this January period, this can be seen as a kind of a soft launch for the new year, as it were. So definitely a time to be thinking about what you'd like to see over the course of the next year, how you would like your year to go. And so a lot of people might be thinking about resolutions and things like that. But I just want to talk to you about when you're thinking about what dreams you want to pursue in the new year, how we actually go from them being dreams up there to being tangible things that we are experiencing and enjoying right now. And the difference between it being up there and, something we're living is the action that we take. What I mean by that is, if we think of it only as, it's a dream, one day I'd love to own this, or I'd love to be doing this, but we don't take the step that's immediately in front of us and that's immediately available, then it will stay a dream out there in the ethers. So let me give you an example of this. Years ago, years ago, more than that. Some of you may know in my previous life, one of them at least, I was a monitoring and evaluation monitor for small grants in Central Asia. The organization I was with gave out grants up to $15,000, and it was my job to meet with them periodically through their grant period to see how they were using the money and what kind of impact they were having in their communities. And for me, the best part of my job was to give them ideas about how to be self-sustaining with the resources they had on hand, so they could continue the work of the project without necessarily needing additional cash infusion from other organizations, right? So, that was the work I did for quite some time, and I was quite successful at it. I think I think the grants that I worked with, somewhere in the ballpark of like 10 million. So I've got some game, right? Have some ideas about how to make things sustainable with resources on hand. Fast forward years later, I was having a conversation with somebody I just met, and she said, one day I'd love to start a nonprofit and, helping kids in after school programs doing such and such. And she's like, and I said, so what's keeping you from starting? She's like, we need to apply for a grant. And I'm like, for what? Like, what is it that you want your grant to be? And I told her my history, and so that's why I was being curious. And she's like, we need to be able to rent a space and buy tables and chairs and be able to get materials and blah, blah, blah. She went through this whole list of things. And I was like, do you mind if I give you some feedback and some insight based on my experience? She's like, well, sure. And I said, you don't need a grant for that. What you need is the action of going to talk to different people in the community and seeing what your community can provide you without you having to put down money for it. And I went through you don't need money to rent a space, because if you go talk to a church or a community center, or somebody's got a space that they're not using, you can ask them if you can borrow their space for these activities after school or for whatever was needed. And I'm like, the tables and chairs, likely if they have that kind of space, they're going to have tables and chairs. There are ways to you need to make connections in your community to see what's already available before you thinking that you as a separate organization have to go out and buy all these things. And I said, besides that, if you haven't already started doing the work, because we also talked about was she already engaged with students doing after school programs? And she was like, no, because we haven't gotten the grant. And I was like, but you're not actually doing the work that you want to be doing. And I was like, you could already be doing that as well. You don't have to have all the kids in the district. You just need, the kids in your neighborhood. Like, you can get started with that. And once you have those successes, then you have something to share with a grant committee that would make them understand that that your project is worthwhile and that they should invest in you. And you can imagine, not just that she looked sunken because of what I was saying, but I could also see that she was angry at me for saying it. And I'm like, and I wasn't so bothered by that because I'd seen this happen before. This idea that, we have to have all these other things before we can actually start the work that we think we need the things for. And I'm like, no, you need to start the work before someone else is going to invest in your project. Another story. Recently, I was talking to somebody who was saying, we need to get some land and start farming for ourselves and our community. And I was like, well, you've mentioned growing some cucumbers and tomatoes and other things before. So the fact that this has come up, the second or third time we've had this conversation, means that it's on your heart to do. And if it's on your heart, that means it's for you and that you can do it. And I said, and you don't need land for this necessarily. You need space and a pot. And I was like, your first step is to figure out where you could put a pot. And then based on those conditions, like lighting, if it's strong sun or low shade or whatever, what crop can you grow in this pot that, will start you on your journey? And I said, the important thing here is that, because even if I hand you a check and you can buy the land, you're not going to put seeds in the ground the next day. Like, there's going to be a lag in time between when you buy the land and when you're actually able to start planting. And I said, before that even happens, you haven't grown anything, so you don't know what type of pests you're going to be dealing with. I mean, you'll know from a textbook standpoint, but you won't have had the practice. And I said, so why not just start where you are? You don't have to feed everybody from the first harvest. Feed yourself, right? And it made me think again on this other story. And I just think so often we forget that if we take a step towards our dreams and our goals, no matter how small the step is, if it's right in front of you and immediately accessible, then it's yours to do and you can do that. And the next step, even if you don't know what it is, will make itself known to you once you've gotten to that point. You don't have to have seen, all the steps that are going to lead you there if you start with where you are right now and you take that first step. The other thing about that is, if you talk about your dream being up here and you want to have it down here, you're just standing here waiting for God in the universe to drop it in your lap. You haven't even raised your arms and taken an action to receive and meet the thing that you're looking for. And the universe can't meet you if you're just standing there, right? I mean, yes. There are such things as, instant healing and miracles. Like, I'm not discounting that. But for the majority of us, the majority of the time, what has to happen is we accept the idea that's been given to us and we figure out a way to take a step towards it. And as we do, we find other people on the path that can assist us in the realization of that dream. That's what I want you to take away from this video today, is that whatever the dream is that you have, that you've been sitting on for 10, 15, 20 years, and it's always been out there, this is the time to start putting things in place and to start lining up what your actions are going to be and to start taking those small steps. Because we've moved from the year of the snake and we've shed all of the things that we've outgrown through our accumulated wisdom, through the trials and experiences that we had throughout the year. And we're now moving into the year of the horse. That shit's about to gallop forward. And so if ever there was a time when you wanted to see growth and progress, now would be the time. But again, we're in January, we're still in the winter months, we're still in, in the space where things aren't ready to burst through the soil just yet. This is the time to plan. This is the time to identify what our first or next step could be, and to start moving in that direction. And like I told my friend, go ahead and find you a space and buy you a pot, right? Because my thinking is, if you grow your first pot of, say, tomatoes, you learn, lots of different things that you wouldn't necessarily expect. And not everything that can be taught in, a video on YouTube or a book that you might read. There's some things that you just learn through the experience of it. And you have something to talk about because you're thinking about how to solve these problems, and that's going to encourage you to talk to other people. And as you talk to other people, that's where these ideas, in the collective come from. But we got to start, and we got to start now. And I want you to think about that in terms of, laying the foundation now for the next couple of months, so that in March, when the new year starts in earnest and things really start to take off, you're in a position to ride along with it. Even the woman with the issue of blood, she wasn't sitting at home praying to Jesus, hoping that she was healed. She took the step of leaving her home, and she reached out to touch the hem of his garment. Because she took those action steps, he was able to then recognize her, and they were able to have that conversation, and that's where she got her healing. But she wasn't sitting at home just praying, hoping, waiting, and wishing, right? So figure out what you can do right now that is right, that you can do using the resources you have on hand. Who do you need to talk to? And that's another thing. Like, even if you don't know what that next step is, then who would you talk to about this? Maybe that first step is figuring out who a mentor would be, right? And it doesn't have to be like, oh, I want you to be my mentor. No, you're just going to go talk to somebody and ask a couple of questions, right? You want to lean on their wisdom and experience. So take whatever small step you can in the direction of your dreams. Keep taking those small steps. And as you get into that practice, one slow step, as you become more confident and assured, the steps become a little bit faster. And now we're walking at a faster pace. And eventually, by the time we get to March, we can start our slow jog, which then takes off into a run and then a gallop. That's what I wanted to share with you today. So, yeah. Sunday, services in session. I love you all. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye.